Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining this webinar on modern workplace safety. Uh, this whole idea has kind of obviously been extremely important, but it has gained even more ground in the COVID and post-COVID world. Just given the fact that uh, employees and employers are struggling to figure out a way to get people back to work in the safest way possible, and and all the other complications that they face just by trying to do this is what we are going to try and talk about in the next maybe 30 to 45 minutes. Uh, and for this, I'm joined by a couple of experts in the field. Vin Imbesi, who is the regional sales manager for Mobotix, and Kris Greiner, who is the vice president sales of Scylla. Both of them come with years and years of experience in the whole image recognition space. And they are going to kind of be talking to us about their work. And then we are going to be posing certain questions to them. And then hopefully we will get some very, very interesting real life and practical examples of how all this works in the real world. Uh, just a little bit about me. I'm Samiran Ghosh. I've been about 27 years in the industry. I've worked with Microsoft, IBM, McKinsey. In about October 2018, I had a bit of a hit refresh moment, and I've kind of gone freelance. And since then, I've been consulting with corporates and startups. I've do some work with Forbes, MIT, and the World Economic Forum. And and what I most enjoy is actually talking about the possibilities of technology and how it can help people in the real world. Uh, and now on to Wayne and Kris. Maybe you can give us a little bit of an intro about yourselves before we kind of move forward.
Sure, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Vin Imbesi, and I'm one of those rare people that have accomplished the trifecta, have experience in security distribution, integration, and then of course now on the manufacturer side. So I've benefited really from just a ridiculous variety of applications and solutions and products spanning, as it says here, video security, analytics, access control, networking equipment, audio, video. So I've been fortunate enough to really have a good handle on a lot of the things out there, as opposed to just one particular aspect of security, which is video. And that's great. It's a good fit for here at Mobotix because we do really advanced integrated video systems. So it's not just standard dummy video security where you're just putting a camera up to record video. A lot of the applications we get into are things that are integrating with some of these other applications and creating actions and events based off what the video is seeing. So happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of this conversation.
Thanks, Win.
Kris?
Over to you, Kris. A little bit about you.
All right, thank you for that. My name is Kris Greiner. I am the VP of Sales for North America for Scylla, and have a long history in technology, all the way back from about when it inception of technology. And I followed that through in a lot of different channels, everything from networking to software development to implementing security systems for some of the largest organizations in the global organizations. For the last 10 years, really been focusing on the security aspect and everything that's associated with that, especially as it pertains to AI and AI-powered video analytics. So that's what we're doing here at Scylla, trying to make the world a safer place.
Thanks, Kris. Thank you so much. So, Kris, what I thought would make sense now is that for maybe between you and Vin, you can kind of take us through a little bit about your work and your solutions so that we kind of set a little bit of a context, and then we'll kind of go on to some question and answers. So, so that we know, the broad framework around which you guys are working, and just get an appreciation for the complexity of the work that you do.
Well, I'll take this first one. At Scylla, we're a software company. We develop AI-powered video analytics for real-time threat detection. So we're using computer vision and machine learning to monitor video cameras, both CCTV and IP video, to monitor those video streams in real time. And we watch for objects, actions, and behavior anomalies as they pertain to physical threat detection. So what that does is that allows us to identify threats in real time, like guns, knives, fights, intruders, person of interest tracking. Everything that we do pertains to physical threats or security identifications. So by accessing those video cameras streams in real time, it's the same as having a person. We're taking a person out of it, replacing that person with an AI to watch that video camera stream live and in real time for whatever threat we're told to watch for. And then when we see that threat that we're told to watch for, and we never blink, we're never tired, we never come in late, we never miss a day, that AI just sits there and quietly watches 24/7 every single camera. And when we identify that threat that we're told to watch for, that's when we trigger that real-time alert to security, to police, whatever workflow we're told to send that alert to. And then a human takes that, whether they're in an operations center, whether they're patrolling security, wherever that threat alert is directed, and then that human makes the ultimate determination about whether to act on that alert or ignore it. And that is the benefit, where we turn a existing legacy security system that just quietly sits there. Historically, they quietly record, right? And majority of that video, 99% plus, never gets viewed. It just simply gets overwritten until something bad happens. Then you go back, you pull the video and you say, yep, this is the bad guy. This is what happened. This is when it happened. So that is a reactive approach to security. What we do, Scylla enables your existing video security system to become a proactive. So by having Scylla watch those video streams in real time for those threats, when every second counts, we're identifying that threat in real time. And that's when we send it over. So it makes additional better use of your systems that are already in place by adding intelligence to it. Some of the solutions that we do, objects, things like guns, knives, intruders, vehicles, humans. We do thermal screening. We partner with Mobotix, and we use Scylla's AI to enhance the capabilities of the Mobotix cameras. Facial recognition. We have a very powerful facial recognition, which is off by default. We don't lead as a company with facial recognition simply because it doesn't differentiate us. But we have our very powerful facial recognition capabilities. That is our own engine, and it's off by default. Behavior anomalies. So we're taking actions and behaviors and can identify threats like fights or suspicious shopping behavior, for example. Intrusion detection, perimeter detection, person of interest tracking. If we identify a person that is a potential threat in a crowd, we can lock on to him based on his image characteristics, his physical characteristics. Much like a person would remember what somebody looks like, our AI can remember what somebody looks like based on their physical attributes. And every camera in the system then, when somebody's identified as a threat, can go out and watch for that person and give updates where they're at. Also, in addition, person search. So if you have a crowd or an event and you have a missing child, we can take the image of that child or the face of that child and tell every camera in the system to go out and look for that missing person. And we do support moving backgrounds. So that means we can support drones, body cams, dash cams, helicopters, and pan tilt zooms. We do not require that we be on a fixed camera for us to do our analytics. And we've really made an impact into the market. And some of the customers that you see up there are some of the customers that have allowed us to put their logos up and say that we're doing what we're working with. We're working with everything from the Daimlers and the manufacturing to Clark County is the 5th largest school district in the country, 330,000 students and 66 high schools. Airports, we're a global company. We secure the airports in the Middle East at the Oman airports, professional sports, and hospitals. Every place is a dangerous place. So we've really got a lot of notable names that people would recognize. We have a lot of non-disclosures that we can't talk about for privacy reasons, and a lot of installations that nobody would recognize. So we've really made an impact. Scylla's really become an industry disruptor technology into this industry.
Thanks, Chris. And in fact, what I really liked about your piece is about how your system is always watching out. When I can give you a really silly example. So in the housing complex I stay in, there was a robbery, and then of course, as an extreme measure, we put CCTV cameras, and somebody in their infinite wisdom put 240 cameras, and now we have no way of knowing what's going on because no human being can watch it. So now we've got cameras, but no idea what's going on. So I think it's so important to have that complete solution as opposed to just putting in a camera and think that you've solved something, because now we've created a bigger problem.
Exactly. You have 240 cameras at your complex, and if you add Scylla to that complex, it would be like having 240 individual security guards or 240 sets of eyes specifically watching for specific threats in specific areas.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you, Chris. Vin, and now over to you for probably a very quick background on Mobotix, and obviously if you can kind of tie it up to the Scylla solution as well, that'd be fantastic, so that we kind of get a complete picture of how this whole thing works.
Yeah, and I condensed. Let's give you a little bit of background on Mobotix. Mobotix was established in 1999, so for about 20 years now, we've been a major provider of security surveillance equipment for the world, right? For these big industrial, heavy-duty, commercial-grade CCTV cameras. We're based in Langmuir, Germany, as you see there. We have 7 other headquarters, and we're very unique in the regards that we make everything about our camera. We make ourselves. So the quality control is really, really, really rock solid. The engineering is rock solid, and we have basically come to the market with a camera that has very specific strengths. And we like working with Scylla because we're actually a very suitable fit for these sorts of applications. In the next slide, we're going to talk about why. So, and we can show all these boxes here. Look, I have a full portfolio, which I'm not going to share here because we don't really have the time. Also, naturally, I have a lot of features that I could spend an hour talking about that I'm not going to talk about. So what I did was I hand selected 6 things that I think is very relevant to the discussions that we're going to have here. Okay. So the first is that microphones and speakers. Our devices, our cameras, as you see at the top here, we don't make cameras. We tend to think that we make devices, right? Because we do a lot more than traditional cameras would do. One of those things is we have microphones and speakers in all of our cameras, right? Which is not totally unique, but we've been doing that for 20 years. So for 20 years, all of our cameras have had microphones and speakers. They've all had the ability to tie in with phone systems. And so what we have is a camera device that we give you that can interact with your phone systems. You could talk through it like an intercom. It could play automated announcements, broadcast noises based off whatever events you want it to do, right? So what I'm doing is I'm basically giving you the option to do these events based on what the analytics tells the camera is happening. And that ties into the next one, actions. So we're unique in the regard that we can do a lot of events based on what the camera sees in the text through Scylla's analytics. So anything from, again, speaker microphone actions, we can turn lights on, we can turn hoses on, we could display different images to screens. The camera itself has the ability to have very deep integrations with all these other systems, which again makes us pretty unique in terms of dealing with just a camera. Modularity, form factor, we're pretty, if you've seen our designs, you'll see that we're pretty unique. A lot of our cameras have 2 sensors, 2 lenses. And that gives you the ability to be very flexible in terms of what the camera is seeing. So for example, for elevated skin temperature, we are able to give you a thermal camera and an HD color sensor side by side. So we're commonly deployed for those purposes because with one camera, we can give you everything that you're looking for. Solid state is a fancy tech way of saying no moving parts. So since inception and since 99, Mobotix was conceived with the idea there'd be no moving parts in our devices. So there's no fan, there's no heater blower. We took out all the components that commonly fail. And the end result is we have a very well documented 8 to 9 year lifespan. Very commonly cameras last 10, 11, 12 plus years, genuinely. So what this does is this makes us a natural fit for environments where the camera is hard to get to, the camera is hard to reach. So like if they're up on a pole, right, we don't want to keep doing maintenance, we're a really good fit because the camera's built to last a long time. But it's also made us a really good fit for cameras in critical environments or where the camera just can't afford to go down. Like maybe they're in a cruise ship, maybe they're in a casino, or they're being used for a critical purpose, such as monitoring for fire, or being used for facial recognition, or being used for elevated skin temperature, or being used for threat detection, people counting, all those things. If you have the best analytics company in the world and your camera goes down, your analytics company is worthless because it can't do what it's supposed to do. So our position in this is that we're providing the equipment to basically put the analytics company, in this case Scylla, in a position to do what it's supposed to do. So we're a very tangible piece of the puzzle here because the camera is not going to fail. From an imaging standpoint, we do phenomenally well with analytics for a couple of very specific reasons. Number one, there's no moving parts, right? So that means that the lenses are always focused, they're always fixed, so they're never going to go out of focus. From a clarity perspective, we actually use a larger aperture. So we're letting more light into the image. More light means more clarity, gives the algorithms more data to work with, puts them in a position, again, to be more successful than they otherwise might be. Because the caliber of camera absolutely has an impact on the ability for these analytics to do what they're supposed to do, right? So we're doing that well. The dual lens thing, as I mentioned before, that kind of assists here, and the durability, again, we're a natural fit for these sorts of environments. And then made in Germany, I really kind of touched on that already. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered it all kind of out of order, but that's more or less summarizing kind of why we're a natural fit for this sort of discussion.
Great. I think so. So I mean, I have to kind of. I remember a very again. I can only tell you about my experience here. So at least in India, a lot of times when people put in cameras, what I've noticed is that a lot of those cameras are actually dummy cameras because it becomes very difficult for people to put cameras everywhere. So I mean, it just beats the whole purpose of putting cameras. So, especially, I mean, just to your point about, the flexibility of especially cameras which are on moving objects like elevators and all that, you put in the camera. So I mean, at least with the cameras and the lenses that are available in retail, it's extremely difficult to kind of wire it all up and connect it to the system. So a lot of the cameras that you see in all these places, I mean, I've learned from experience, are actually dummies. So they really don't work because it's very difficult to put. So there are cameras, real cameras in a lot of places, and then in a lot of places they're just dummies. So it's like a deterrence, but that's great. It's extremely dangerous, and if you really need to use it sometime.
Yeah, dummy cameras, as in cameras that are basically not functioning, right? They're just there to look like there's a camera. Yeah.
Correct. So great. So I think that gives us a bit of a background on how this whole complex world works. So what we'll do now is that as we were going through this, I had a set of questions that kind of popped up in my head, and we'll kind of just go through a few of them and then see how best we can cover everything. And if then there is time, we'll kind of do some audience questions. So Vin, I will kind of start with you. So I think, I started by saying that enterprises are really struggling to figure out how is it, when can they get people in, and once they get people in, how are they going to make it safe for them to return to the workplace in 2021, 22, 23. I mean, we don't know when, but it needs to happen. So from your perspective and from the product and industry you represent, how do you see that happening? What are the 2 or 3 steps you see people taking to make that happen, and what do you think would be critical to make it happen?
Sure. So remember that I'm from a camera manufacturer. I am involved in all different kinds of applications and deployments and verticals, all different kinds of facilities. So I get involved in a lot, and what I'm seeing is things are definitely trending towards workplaces opening up. That's what That's what the market is trending towards. But let's kind of think about what happened for a little bit. The video industry market is really evolving. I mean, cameras were like in 1990s. It was okay. You put a camera up, you record the spot, and that camera's going to tell you what happened there. And then we got a little older, went into the 2000s, and it became, okay, camera, tell me what happened there, but also show me what's happening live in my facility, right? So the camera was also adding value in that way. We've kind of reached the next evolution of video security where cameras are, okay, camera, tell me what happened there. Tell me what's happening live. Let me see what's happening all over my facility, but also tell me what you see. Cameras are becoming tools, right? This has been a trend that we saw before COVID. Cameras are being basically deployed to help businesses run more efficient, keep them more secure by giving intel based on what the camera is interpreting, or not the camera, I'm sorry, the solution at this point. Based on what the solution is interpreting, what is happening in that scene and informing management on what's going on in the building. So again, this was a trend that happened before COVID, and we're doing it in all different kinds of applications. But what has happened is all these places have shut down for a year and a half, and we're all trying to figure out what's going. And all of these manufacturers are seeing this, and they steered those tools towards specifically the challenges of the day, right? Which is keeping people safe. And so you've had a year and a half of development where these building facility managers are looking at their facilities and go, okay, my God, how am I going to get all these people back in here? And it's important for them to know that we have more resources and tools than we had a year and a half ago, specifically because a lot of R&D, a lot of testing, and a lot of evolution has led to the fact that today we have a lot more resources available to kind of put these tools in their hands where we didn't even 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. So, the trend is definitely in that direction towards deploying cameras as tools and then using some of the analytics that we're going to be talking about today to kind of help open up those workplaces. And so, Kris, I'd like to
Absolutely. Yeah. The fact that it's not a viewing tool anymore, but it's an aid and it's a predictive engine. So, Kris, are you seeing the same thing? I mean, are you seeing some?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Vin. Before COVID, before the pandemic, organizations were, they were tasked with just, basic security. They just had to worry about things like general violence, like active shooters, intruders, fights, but now that everybody's coming back, there's a whole nother perspective on that. And how do we make a safe place for employees to return to work? So not only do I have to worry about all of those physical fights and guns and shootings and things like that, I have to worry about COVID and spread and keeping my employees just basic healthy. And so by using analytics and the analytic tools that are available, you can add that intelligence to the security system that's already there and do things that, something as simple as using the cameras that are sitting there quietly recording to do heat mapping and track the workflow of people in an organization. So, if I'm a corporation or a factory and or retail and people are naturally having a traffic flow in a certain direction, I can use my security system, my camera's already there. You have Scylla analyze all that data. We can put a heat map and we can tell you where all the people are, the traffic is. So if you have a COVID cleanup crew, for example, they can go focus their efforts on where the people actually are and not go clean an area that nobody's been in for, all day or hours, or a restroom that nobody's been in for, 8 hours. They can focus their efforts. You can do things like eliminating touch spots, use facial recognition to clock somebody in and out of work for access control, and not have that time card as a potential point of spread for any sort of health issue. You can use, you can turn on the anti-tailgating at the same time when we access, integrate with access control, we lock or unlock a door, give somebody access, turn on anti-tailgating to make sure nobody's sneaking in. All of those other things that are contactless, in addition to the capability of simultaneously scanning for a gun, a knife, a fight, making sure that somebody belongs. Put those COVID prevention tools into that mix as well.
Absolutely. No, I think that's extremely, kind of interesting to know. I always think of cameras just, as, just captures this thing, but there is just so many things that are possible with it that, once you speak about it, kind of opens my mind to it. So Kris, I think the other question, I think you kind of touched upon COVID a few times. So just given the way vaccination is going, and we hear that maybe cases are plateauing. So in your opinion, is COVID really seen as a threat in the business world now, or have enterprises and organizations already moved to other issues? And a small part of that is that uh, because COVID was such an intense experience, what were your learnings from this experience, and that you have brought into your product and your solution?
You know, COVID's always going to be with us, right? Just like the flu. It's never going to go away. We just have to learn to live with it. Just like we learned, we all learn good hygiene habits, wash your hands, social distance when possible. Um, Other than healthcare, hospitals, nobody wants to welcome somebody that is ill into their organization, their school, their work, their factory, so you can use things, as I mentioned earlier, you can use our analytics to help stop the spread of COVID or help identify those people that may have, outlier, be a different temperature than everybody else. You talk about what's happening right now as people are going back to work, as everybody's trying to get back to the new normal. A lot of organizations are starting to lift their mask mandates. In the old days, if you wore a mask, you were a bad guy, right? So we've been doing masks forever. But then when the pandemic hit, if you didn't wear a mask, you were a bad guy. But now as everybody's starting to reopen, we take off those masks, people are coming in, we use the tools to help encourage the social distancing. That's by adding the AI to their existing surveillance, it's part of an overall safety and security plan. So like last year, people were doing, putting in a Mobotix body temperature detection solution to try and identify that person that had an elevated, a higher temperature than everybody else or different. Now, people aren't buying specifically for that. They're not interested just in that. It factors into an overall safety and security plan. It's one of those things at the same time where they want to identify people that may or may not be ill. They also want to, at the same time, scan that person for those weapons, the gun, the knife, the fight, and intruders, and everything that goes with it. So it's people, organizations are starting to evolve. They're starting to lift a lot of those requirements. People are starting to get a little bit more loose as they start getting back to the new normal, but we're always going to have to live with it. So it's a matter of just coexisting and putting the tools in place to help stop the spread, help mitigate, identify where to clean up, and just good best practices overall.
Well, what's pretty cool in the deployment of cameras as tools, though, Kris, is that if masks do become an issue, you just buy the license and now you put the mask detection back on again. Like once you have these tools in place, they become very flexible. And so masks may not be a problem now. They obviously were then, but maybe you didn't have the system in place then. If it's a problem 6 months from now, you already have it in place and you're using that for facial recognition. But if you want to add mask detection, you click a button, and now now you're doing mask detection with the cameras in the front lobby.
You're exactly right. And with the mask, because Scylla is a server-based, a lot of the analytics are embedded in the camera itself. So you're limited to the processing power of the camera. You're limited to that version of analytic that's in that camera. It's basically a DVD. You buy it, you watch it again and again and again. It's the best it's ever going to get. You want a better analytic, you buy a whole new camera. With Scylla, we are the Netflix. We call ourselves the Netflix of analytics because we're server-based, analyzing with powerful GPUs, and the system is always the latest, the greatest, the best, the most current machine learning. And so you're always getting the new analytic. And like you just mentioned, Vin, you can turn our analytics on, you can turn them off, but the system learns and it's capable of learning. So masks are a perfect example. When masks first came out, everybody, medical surgical masks were blue, right? But human creativity, people came out with all crazy different colors. They came out with, actual drawings on their masks. They have masks that had an extension of the face on them. And so it was really easy to initially defeat a lot of these face mask analytics detection analytics that are out there. And if you had an embedded analytic that you're trying to use, you're going to get false detection after false detection after false detection to the point where it basically becomes worthless because you ignore it. But with ours, the system learns. It's trainable. It learns from its mistakes. It learns from, as face mask evolves. We've even seen at some of our installations, people coming in with 100% clear face mask, right? So of course it will defeat the system because in most detections, because you can see that person's face, but Scylla has been able to identify even a clear face mask on a person. And so there's a lot of benefits about having machine, true computer vision and machine learning to always have the latest and greatest capabilities.
Mm-hmm. No, this is great. In fact, the one time the first time I felt it is on the iPhone Face ID, right? I mean, you put on, it used to work beautifully, and then you put on, it cover half your face, and it just doesn't work, And then I kind of struggling to figure out what was my pin, that I had. So you're right, and obviously Apple took that much time to figure out and create a patch, and I think they're still trying to just do some other form of recognition. But you're right. I mean, it's just that simple action has created such a huge complication which needs to be solved. Great. So the another obviously curse of COVID and the pandemic is business slowdown, which obviously means people are going to get much more prudent with their spending. So so Kris, in the light of this, how do you kind of see solutions like Mobotix and Scylla working together, competing with other priorities? Because people are always willing to invest in sales and marketing and business growth, but this is a problem is only seen as a problem till it till something goes wrong, and then everybody tries to invest. So I wanted you to just talk a little bit about the where this will fit in a priority, and just as a corollary, that if you could kind of, just for the benefit of the audience, just talk about some real life situations where this is kind of paid off, just having this solution has paid off, which you can kind of talk directly to the question of ROI. So maybe a little bit about the priorities, and then a little bit about real life situations where you've seen this paying off very quickly and making a difference on the ground.
Sure. Now, if I'm a C-level person in an organization, an enterprise, school, hospital, healthcare, there's a lot of priorities, right? But what's going to be more important than keeping your employees, your customers, your kids, your everybody in your organization safe? And whether that is physical safe, whether that is their health safety, there's multiple ways that by adding Scylla or Mobotix or an AI powered solution to your cameras, there's a lot of benefits for ROI. One obvious return on your investment would be the fact that you're using technology that you can minimize headcount for the number of security guards that you would need, for example. Your example that you gave earlier about having your 240 cameras that nobody's watching. I'm sure if there's security guards around your organization, you could, if you have 10 security guards, maybe you can cut that to 4 and use the technology to use the cameras to watch live 24/7 at all 240 cameras. It's like, so that's an immediate ROI, is you can reduce headcount on your security. Another is, what's the cost? There's always the cost to do something, but what's the cost not to do something? So a lot of people will do that gamble. It's not going to happen to me gamble, right? It's not going to happen here. They'll try and play the odds, but it does happen. It happens everywhere. And if you are the unlucky organization that it happens at, what's the cost to you as the director of security and safety, or as that C-level person who was tasked with keeping your organization, customers, employees safe? What's the cost of the organization in general? What's it going to do to their brand, their reputation, to their customers feeling safe coming in there, or students feeling safe going to an organization, that gives that I don't care attitude? What's the cost to society? You can't put a cost on human life, or whether you save a life, but the one person, the people who will put a price on human life are attorneys. right? There's going to be a lawyer somewhere that puts a price on that life that was lost because that organization didn't put the proper tools in place that could have done a lot of prevention. You have an active shooter. Active shooters, just by logic, they start outside and they move indoors. So if an active shooter comes to an organization, they pull up in the parking lot, and you have a camera in that parking lot that identifies them the second they get out of their car and they expose a visible weapon, we're able to identify that weapon at first sight, not at first shot, because by the time somebody actually fires a weapon, damage has been done. But if we identify that weapon in real time before that active shooter even gets to the front door, we identify, lock onto that person. And as he's moving from camera to camera to camera, and approaching that front door, we send that real-time alert to security, to police, to whoever we want to get it. We can tie into those third-party access control systems, lock that door before he even gets into that system, and give security a heads up that somebody's coming. So, a lot of bad things can be prevented by using analytics to identify that threat before it happens. So what's the cost to that organization by not putting a tool in place to do this? It could come in the form of a lawsuit, and we know how litigious society is when bad things happen. Who's ultimately going to be responsible for not putting the right tools in place that could have potentially prevented a tragedy?
No, true.
My comment would be, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing that these are tools that are being adopted on an escalating scale, right? We're not there where it's commonplace every day, everywhere yet, but we should be, because people are still learning. But I think that, like Kris, what you said, what's the value of being able to know the second the next employee sets foot on your property, right? What's the value in it? It's hard to quantify, but I think the value is that should be a standard piece of security for your facility. And I think we will get there. I just don't think we're there yet in terms of technology. Technologically, we're obviously there. But in terms of awareness, people just need to learn about it. They need to learn how powerful these tools are. And that's really the only obstacle towards mass adoption, is that people don't realize how good these things are. If you had someone that vandalized a dumpster, right? Little common things like this, vandalized a dumpster. Yeah, you could put a camera out there in a dumpster and see who vandalized the office dumpster. But if you had license plate recognition on there, you'd know, okay, who that person is. They were here today, but they were here yesterday. They were here last week. They were here the month before. This is a problem that we need to stop. You're not going to know that unless you have some of these algorithms putting them to work for you. And so really the obstacle is getting people to just understand how easy this is and how powerful the tools are, because it's really just a massive change in handling these workplace scenarios. Not to mention, you mentioned threat detection. What about weapons detection, right? I mean, unfortunately, we're leaving one pandemic and going into another problem, which is something that we've kind of had a reprieve from in the U.S., which are these workplace shootings. It's a sad reality of our country for sure. But going back to your question, what's the value? What is the value of knowing the second a weapon is seen in a scene, is viewed in a scene, right? Traditionally, how are you going to respond to a violent instance, a shooting, right? Someone pulls a gun out, pulls a trigger, and you hope that someone of security either hears that shot or is in the vicinity, or otherwise you're waiting for somebody to scramble, pick up the phone, and call the correct person that has to respond, right? Otherwise, Scylla's going to pick that up immediately, whether it's the shot, whether it's seeing the gun visibly in somebody's hand. And the second that happens, you've already started the process of responding to that. You've greatly decreased response time, and you've greatly increased the ability to keep your facility and the people in it safer than they otherwise would be. Again, I think these things are going to be standard. They should be standard. And they're immensely powerful. And that's, as you can tell, kind of excites me. But I think it belongs in it's a common staple of a lot of these workplaces, especially these larger ones.
And I can give you a real life scenario or a real life situation where an analytic helped avoid a potential problem. We have a professional sports stadium that we're installed in. And prior to Scylla being installed in this very, very large venue, this organization had troubles with people that would constantly try to breach the facility. They'd sneak in the middle of the night, maybe been drinking, whatever. They get in. A specific case or a specific example that was given to us, this organization had a man in his 50s with his flip-flops on, been drinking too much. He scaled a 2-level wall. Nobody knows how he got in. But he climbed in, he got inside. It happened to be a Major League Baseball park. He got inside, he ran the bases, took selfies at home plate, broke into one of the stores, was trying on jerseys. And then before he left a note that said, "Your security sucks," and he got away. And this is an organization that has over 700 cameras. They have 24/7 roaming security. They have a 24/7 operations center with a video wall monitoring all of those 700 cameras live and in real time. And then when they went back and they checked the tapes, they found that this guy was in that stadium for up to 3 hours undetected. And so we installed Scylla's intruder detection, and we turned it on all the cameras that are on the perimeter of the stadium. And now the second that anybody stepped in front of any of those cameras during a specific zone or a time period where there wasn't supposed to be anybody, it immediately notified security. It sends them the live stream of the camera that detects it, the thumbnails to the roaming photos to the roaming security, so they know exactly the threat that they have to deal with, whether they want to handle it themselves or whether they want to call police and go meet them. It wasn't 3 days after I installed that a group of people had jumped a fence and security knew what they were up against. They met them, the group retreated, and it avoided a potential problem, right? Whether that was theft, whether it was violence, whether, who knows what that could have been or turned into. But security was able to head that off immediately. The people retreated, and it was a win for the security at that point. They got their job. So it's a real-time detection. Had we not been on there or with the analytics, it's highly probable that those people would have run around for who knows how long inside that organization, causing who knows what damage.
True. No, this is absolutely. So in fact, the fact that Vin brought up this whole thing around shooting, and I don't know how true it is, but there were news items in India about how just through this long weekend, there was this crazy number of shootings in the US, which, obviously some of them resulted in loss of lives, which is just kind of a crazy thing to imagine, right? And then you start thinking about what could you have done to prevent it. I mean, of course, banning guns is one issue, but beyond that, just early detection would have been so much nicer. So on to the next one. I just thought, in fact, this whole detection thing brings up the important issue of privacy versus security. So I just wanted to know, maybe from you, Kris, is that, at what point does the need for security invade upon privacy? And number two is that, just from a systems perspective, how secure would you say the Scylla system is? Because obviously you want a system that is providing security, but that system itself needs to be secure. So just this 2 points about privacy versus security, how people are making the trade-off, and then next, the security of your system itself.
Sure. No, privacy is huge. Scylla doesn't have any issues with privacy simply because we do not log, store, record any of that video. All of that video that was previously being logged, stored, and recorded is on that customer's NVR. And we're not accessing that. We're accessing the video stream in real time. And we are able to, our facial rec is always off by default, and we can blur any part of the video at any time. And because we don't log, store, record any of that video, we adhere to the California Consumer Privacy Act and GDPR in Europe. So privacy is not an issue for us. As far as secure on your system, how, hacking, it's always a point today. At Scylla, we've integrated the Okta identity management solution as a standard feature inside Scylla. It's bundled into our software. So we also use military-grade encryption, and our servers, we support both cloud servers and on-premise servers, or hybrid mix, or edge computing. But for any of where privacy or security is a real issue, we can put on-premise servers inside a customer's firewall, adhere to all of their security requirements, allow them to put their security tools in on the root of our server, and be inside. In fact, we don't even require. We have some customers that are so secure that they don't allow any internet to our Scylla server at all. So it makes it a little, more time consuming to do any sort of updates or support. But to adhere to their security requirements demand it, we can do that.
Mm-hmm. And so Vin, what about you? I know, because you coming from the device side, but is this kind of a question or a threat that you face in terms of the security itself of the camera and the devices, and people kind of misusing it or stuff like that?
Of course, anything that's on your network is becoming a bigger and bigger target. So I guess you have a two-part question. The first part is privacy. There's really only one thing I can say, which is because most of the intelligence is being done on the Scylla side, that's where you would address all the privacy concerns, right? But in terms of hardware, I told you all my cameras have microphones. You can disable that microphone if you wanted to. So if you don't want to record audio, you don't record audio. And then, my cameras also have the ability to kind of do redundant storage on the camera. If you don't want the camera to record at all locally, then it doesn't record at all, right? So privacy is basically completely in your hands. From a cybersecurity perspective, I have a lot more information for you. We're unique in the regard that we're built in Germany, but we're not only built in Germany. We actually make the firmware for the cameras in-house by Mobotix in Germany ourselves. So what we have is a product that's exclusively produced in Europe, not Asia specifically, which is where the problems are coming from. But it's all in-house. It's one group of people touching it. And it's incredibly robust in terms of having the firmware that's locked down, but also in terms of some of the feature sets that we have. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but we have all kinds of feature sets and awards and stuff to demonstrate that our product is essentially one of the most airtight IT devices on the market right now. It's just one of the things that we're really, really well known.
Great. So I actually had a bit of a question around what makes your products unusual, and I think in parts we have touched on it. And since we've kind of got 10 minutes left, I don't want to kind of ask you the same question and ask you to repeat the features again. So maybe what I'll jump next to Win is just the fact that in the last 6 months to a year, have you seen a shift in the kind of applications or use cases for your cameras and for the Scylla solution, things that were probably not there a year back? Anything that's been a response to COVID or a new way of working or new requirements?
Yeah. So remember, we're cameras. We get involved in all kinds of applications, but specifically in regards to workplaces, it was a year ago. A year ago, it was nothing other than elevated skin temperature. That was it. It's all people cared about. And if it took your temperature, people wanted it. And there was a big, lots of interest in what these things did and didn't do. So a year ago, people were scrambling and they just needed to get a system in place. And they didn't so much care about some of the features. It was just, hey, does this work? Will it run? Will it be reliable? And will it do it accurately? And that was kind of where it stopped. Fast forward to now, there's less interest, but we're finding that the interest is there. People are much smarter about it. Their expectations are much higher. So before it was, okay, is it reliable? Will it run? And is it going to be accurate? And now it's, okay, is it reliable? Will it run? And will it be accurate? And will it give me reporting? And can I tie it into my access control? And can I integrate it with facial recognition? These office environments and other facilities, they are really starting to pursue these much more robust solutions. The complete opposite of what these little tablets were that flooded the market a year ago, right? People have finally realized them for the kind of the fraud that they were. Specialized little devices that didn't work that well. They're really much now looking much further ahead. We want a device that we can use this year, next year, 8 years from now, 9 years from now, not just for temperature, but also for facial recognition, threat detection, mass detection, and any other detection that we want to incorporate in, and tie that into our access control and other infrastructure systems of our building. And that's really what we're seeing, the evolution of the demand for those sorts of products. Very tangible.
So much more holistic. A much more holistic approach to just a point solution that solves one problem. They wanted to kind of tie it into other systems and future requirements as well, is what you say.
Yes.
Right. Uh, 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 Chris, anything different you're seeing in Scylla? Anything
Exactly the
completely
same.
different?
I'll
Okay.
support what Vin just said. Yeah, before it was panic buying. Will somebody take my temperature? That's all I want to do. And now it's evolved into, hey, that's one of the things I wanted to do. At the same time, when you're scanning for that, a temperature or anything like that, they also want to look for that gun, that knife, that fight. People are starting to turn off the face mask detections, and they're saying, hey, we're turning off face masks. Can you add gun detection? In replace of that, and we'll use that existing computer power, that server power that we've already paid for, that we own, that we're sitting there, and we'll use it for something that's practical, that we have a real threat or a concern about today. We don't care about the mass as much anymore, but we do care about a gun or a fight, anybody coming into our organization. Or we do want to use that for a time card, to clock an employee in and out of work. So having the flexibility to switch that analytic and what they're looking for using the infrastructure that they've already invested in is a real value to the customers.
Well, also, Scylla is going to keep developing analytics. So if you put the system in place, you're going to do everything that you have the menu that they have now. But if 3 years from now, there's a series of hat bombings where people are hiding bombs in their hats and walking into facilities, and suddenly hats are outlawed, and Scylla comes out with a hat analytic, you can add the hat analytic in, right? So like these are devices you're going to have for a decade that you can flick switches on and off and add, just like your phone, add and remove applications to suit your need of the challenges of the day. And that's kind of what we have to offer.
Yeah, we're not telling an organization or a customer that they have to buy new cameras, a new MVR, or a new video management system. We work with their existing legacy equipment that's already in place.
Great. So this is good. So I think from whatever I've heard, obviously it sounds like it's obviously an extremely it's an evolving area, and you kind of got to keep changing things differently. And between Mobotix and Scylla, obviously between the fact that Mobotix is all in-house and all of the stuff is made yourself, and with Scylla developing newer and newer algorithms to make with the evolving and changing demand, you kind of got all your bases covered. But I just had the one last question is that, is that obviously this is not a magic wand that solves everything. So just from the both of you, that, what are those situations where you have known these solutions to not work as well? Or what are the 2 or 3 things that people need to keep in mind when they are buying into a solution that this, that you need to check these 2 or 3 boxes to say that, I need to kind of get, this kind of thing clear in my head, or these are the 2 or 3 parameters that I need to be sure of. That's when Mobotix and Scylla work best, or, they won't give the results that, otherwise they won't give the results that I was expecting of it. Like kind of not buying into a magic portion. You need to do something yourself. So what are those things that you need to keep in mind?
Well, I'll go ahead and take that first. One of the things is the thermal scanning outdoors. It just doesn't work. There's been a lot of crazy claims over the last year. You've seen people put a thermal scanner in the back of a pickup truck, drive down the road, and try and claim they can scan people walking on the sidewalk. It doesn't work. So you have to, as a salesperson, a lot of people go out and say that it's magic, it can do anything, but you have to set not only the capabilities, but the limitations of the analytics, the real world expectation of what we can deliver. And a lot of that is going to be based on the quality of the camera that we're monitoring, as well as the placement of that camera. So for example, if you want to do facial recognition on a camera that's placed in a ceiling looking straight down, it's a terrible placement, and it's just literally not going to work. You have to have a straight on look, and you have to have a good camera that can, have the capabilities of identifying an object or a face, in a proper placement. So that's a lot of the limitations is basically human error. It's the person or the salesperson that is misrepresenting the product's capabilities and limitations, as well as the importance of how it's, the angles or how it's installed, or the quality of that camera.
Yeah, like Chris said, there's no magical enhance button where you can just push it and it solves whatever problem the camera's having. Application engineering, selecting the right camera with the right pixel density, field of view, these are all important things when trying to put the camera in a position to do what it's supposed to do. Now, the beauty with what Scylla's doing with AI engines is that the camera can learn, right? But it can only learn so much. If we put the camera 40 feet in the air, it's just not going to see what it needs to see. But it is going to improve. The longer that camera is in operation, the more accurate it gets. But it's still, at the end of the day, about educating people. It's about learning yourself about what the camera can and can't do and what steps need to be taken in order for that camera to be put in a place to do what it's supposed to do.
No, absolutely. So actually, I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I'm just wondering, Anastasia, is there any other questions? Anyone else? Anyone's posed any questions or sent in any other questions that the panel here can kind of talk to or help address?
No, nothing so far. So if there are no questions, I think we can finish.
Great, great. So, I mean, for the benefit of the viewers, these are our contacts, Vin, Kris, and myself. Obviously, if you write to me, I'm going to be forwarding the questions to Kris and Vin. But other than that, please feel free to get in touch. I hope, I mean, I've obviously gone back much richer from this interaction and from this understanding. I hope that's been the case with you as well. Any last comments, Kris, Vin, anything else that you kind of want to leave the audience with before we kind of wrap this up?
Just like to thank everybody for your time, your interest, and reach out if you have any questions at all.
It was an easy hour to fill because it's a really interesting topic. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for making it so interesting for everyone who joined. Thank you very much. And thank Anastasia for this opportunity to do this. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.